All right, so both the 5-year and the 10-year Treasury at 4.31% today. Now, Treasuries spiked 20 basis points this morning after the CPI came in slightly higher than expected. The monthly report came in at 0.3%, above expectations of 0.2%, and 12-month CPI came in at 3.1%, above the expectation of 2.9%. Now, that might sound small overall, but really the market is hanging on every last word of the Fed, and every data point that's coming out is making a difference. And it's primarily jobs and inflation. But as these data points come out, you can expect some wild swings with Treasuries. I've talked about how this is not going to be a straight line down. We're going to have some bumps along the way. And this is what we're experiencing right now, some extreme turbulence. So Treasuries were already on the rise last week after several Fed speeches that basically trended toward a lower but slower mantra for rate cuts this year. Basically, they alluded to a total of 2 or 3 rate cuts total this year. Now, I still believe we're going to have more than 3 cuts this year, even though we had a few months of higher than expected inflation readings. The signs are there that it's only a matter of time until we see the lower prints that we're expecting. Now, that aside, actually, if it depends on what measure of inflation you're looking at. According to Fed's measure of inflation, we still haven't hit this 2% inflation reading. But if you look at that Penn State inflation reading, which takes out some of the lagging indicators, big one being housing, we've already gone below, actually. I think we're at like 1.9% inflation, according to them. Now, if you go according to the way they look at inflation, that means that we would actually see a spike in inflation in the next handful of months, like in the next 3 or 4 months, because some of those bigger swings that we had over the last 12 months would actually come into effect. So it's not necessarily the end of the world if we're seeing higher than expected inflation, but according to what the Fed uses, it's definitely having a huge effect on Treasuries. So last week, with all the Fed speeches, they were basically saying 3 cuts this year, but the market was actually pricing in a total of 6 cuts for the year. The CPI data definitely cut down the market's expectation of a cut in March. In fact, that's off the table. And even a cut in May is off the table now, according to the market. Instead, the market's counting on a cut in June with expectations of 90 basis points in cuts versus the 175 basis points they were pricing at the beginning of the year. So it's quite a big difference. It's basically been cut in half. But like I said, a lot of this information could come in differently over the next couple of months, and things could change rapidly. Don't be surprised if that happens. That's kind of sort of what happened when they said inflation was transitory, right? So things could change quickly, but as of right now, the expectations of rate cuts have gone down significantly according to the market, and this is the reaction you're seeing in Treasuries. Treasuries have gone up 20 basis points from this morning to the end of the day as I'm recording this. So that is a pretty big spike. Now, Treasuries may calm down a little bit over the next few days, but it's really tough to say. So what does this mean for interest rates? Well, most of our lenders do not price directly off Treasuries. There are a few that do. So for the lenders that are pricing off Treasuries, you're going to see an immediate rise in interest rates today. Or tomorrow, really. It's based on the opening price. Now, for lenders who don't directly price off Treasuries, they're more than likely going to sit here and give it a couple of days to assess where they think rates are really going to shake out on a more consistently before they raise rates. So if they stay in this general vicinity, expect rates to go up. If they kind of level off a bit, let's say they go down maybe another 10 basis points over the next few days, you can expect rates to probably go up a little bit for those lenders whose rates are not tied directly to the Treasury. And you'll probably see that early next week with their next week's prints. So anyways, the point is, hopefully if you had an eye out, hopefully you're locked in on that interest rate. That would be your best case scenario. If not, I would jump on that right away. And if you have quotes out and you're considering deals and you got quotes in the last couple days or last week or 2 weeks ago, definitely those are old. So you should get those refreshed and take a look at them. Now, one other thing that I want to make sure, or that I kind of want to allude to, because this is what I'm seeing in the news. There was all this talk about how banking was resilient and the thing that happened with SVB and First Republic and everything like that. That was all just behind us, right? But then this news came out about New York Community Bank Corp, who actually purchased Flagstar, basically being taken down to like a junk stock, basically. Like they were significantly downgraded. Their stock plummeted. So that is a sign that the banking industry is really not as resilient as they say it is. And mind you, a team of people that was at First Republic Bank actually moved over to Flagstar Bank, and they were planning on having all these great things that were rolling out for Flagstar. I'm sure some of you know this. And basically none of that stuff came to fruition. And now you're hearing about this bank that purchased them, being in trouble, essentially. So it will be interesting to see what plays out over the next several months. But that basically does show that the banking industry is in fact not as resilient as they're saying, and that there may be some more trouble ahead, especially as a lot of these commercial real estate loans come due, specifically in the office sector. Now, I just read this article in Bloomberg today that was like a global strategist that was basically saying the Fed needs to cut rates by May or June of this year. Otherwise, we're going to have like a Lehman Brothers repeat type thing because of this commercial real estate crisis that's really on the verge right now. So there are a lot of big business people, I think it was the CEO of Citadel, I'll put it here, that basically said, commercial real estate is going to be really tumultuous in 2024, primarily because of this office sector with all of these commercial real estate loans coming due and things. So do expect that lending standards might be still tight for the rest of the year, if not tightening a little bit more depending on the lender, because a lot of regional banks did loans on office buildings. So they have a mixed bag, right? Like they might be doing multifamily and office, industrial, retail. And while retail might be really strong and, multifamily is doing okay, this office thing could really drag them down because we're talking about some pretty massive companies that are going to have issues. I mean, a lot of them are these like fancy office buildings in the downtown areas of these bigger cities. San Diego's not excluded from that. I was actually sitting down with a broker a couple of weeks ago, and he was saying that he was an office broker and is now shifting his business away. But basically, office vacancy in downtown San Diego is about 40%. That's shocking. And so he was saying that there's this huge difference though. It's like the guy who owns office downtown has an average 40% vacancy. But if you have, really good office in certain areas like coastal communities and things like that, the picture is very different. If you have buildings that are newer with great amenities and things like that, that the picture could be very different. In fact, the occupancy could be better than ever. They could be increasing their leasing rates. So it just really depends on where you're at. But 40% vacancy in downtown San Diego, that's a problem because those are massive institutional loans and owners and things like that. So that's going to be, a few buildings that have gone bad is really an impact a regional bank if they were the lender on that loan. So anyways, I do think that we need to keep an eye on lending for this year. Don't expect to get the most aggressive financing. I've been saying this for a year, but somehow people are still shocked. You are not going to get the most aggressive financing in this market right now because right now it's all about being conservative and there's a lot of uncertainty in the market and banks really don't like uncertainty. So they tend to get a little more picky when that happens and they get a little bit more conservative. So if you got quotes on anything over the last week or two, definitely get those updated. Check out the numbers. Unfortunately, I think rates will be higher than what you were quoted a few weeks ago. I was parading around telling everybody that I had rates in the high fives over the last 3 or 4 weeks, and that's probably changing now. So anyways, you guys have a fabulous week and I will keep you updated, and let's see what treasuries do over the next few days and coming into next week.